While the Indian rupee was hitting a record low on 11th July 2022, the Reserve Bank of India announced an arrangement for its traders to organize imports and exports in the international market in rupees. Although the decision was mainly focused on continuing trade activities with Russia, while the West was imposing sanctions, this could also help Indian traders carry out activities with other countries that cannot accept the dollar as a form of payment. The sanctions on Russia by the West did not only bring challenges for Russia, but they also made it difficult for India. The main problem that led to this development is Russia being removed from the SWIFT network. If we try to understand SWIFT, it is a network mainly of 6 different parties that includes Indian traders, Indian banks, American banks, foreign banks, and foreign traders. How SWIFT network works is that the Indian bank would have a bank account in an American bank to keep their money in dollars. Similarly, another country will also have their bank account in the American bank to keep their dollar. This is because only the US bank can hold money in dollars. This is why all the banks in the world have bank accounts in the US banks. Suppose a trader in India wants to purchase something from another trader in South Africa. They cannot directly do it through the Indian banks. They first have to ask the Indian bank to pay the US bank in dollars and ask the US bank to pay the bank in South Africa in South African currency. For example, if 80 is the exchange rate between the US dollar and the Indian rupee, if Indian bank has to convert 1 crore Indian rupee to US dollars, it would be around 120,000 US dollars. Now these US dollars have to be converted into South African currency and paid to South African seller. We can see there needs to be a lot of communication between a lot of parties among banks in different countries for a simple task of trade between 2 traders in just 2 different countries. And additionally, the fluctuation in the exchange rate is another major headache for traders as well as countries. Moreover, it requires a well-organized network of banks, which we know as SWIFT. This network is controlled mainly by the US and Europe, and more than 50% of international trade transactions are done using the SWIFT network. Now the question is, what is the problem with using the network, and why is the Indian government trying to use an alternative way for international trade? The first and main problem is that this network is controlled mainly by the US and Europe, and if they don't like the way other countries behave in geopolitics, they can impose sanctions and even remove them from the network, just like they have done to Russia. But in short, if other countries do not behave the way Europe and the US want, they can simply cut them off from the SWIFT system, and this was exactly what they did to Iran. And the second problem could be that since the US has control over all the dollar accounts, they can even freeze the dollar that is in the US accounts, and this is what they did to Russia. Around $300 billion of Russia's money in dollar accounts have been frozen since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This simply means Russia cannot use its own money available in the dollar accounts. As a result, Russia cannot trade with other countries. So even if India wants to trade with Russia, they cannot do it because Russia has sanctions imposed by the US, which has affected India, as well as India cannot trade with Russia. Also, using the SWIFT network is costly, since there are a lot of parties involved while doing a single transaction. There is at least 1 to 5% commission charged by the system. But the funny part here is Europe has made exceptions to some Russian accounts so that they can still import oil from Russia. We can clearly see that the West is using its supremacy to hinder the economy of other countries, and this is what India didn't like, and it decided to allow international trade using Indian rupee. To make this possible, Indian government came up with a bank account called the Vostro account. So now, to settle transactions with international traders, the international trader can have a bank account in the Vostro account. If they want to pay the Indian trader, they can do through that bank account in rupees, so this will boycott the dollar. Now, how will it benefit the Indian economy is the main question you guys might be thinking. The first advantage is that India will be able to carry on trade with Russia without difficulty, as Russia is one of the major trade partners of India. You might have already heard of some news that India is buying Russian oil at a lower price, while other countries are busy imposing sanctions on Russia. And secondly, India can also trade in rupees with countries other than Russia. India can buy goods at a cheaper cost from other countries like Iran and Venezuela, where the West has imposed sanctions. And we can also hear news of both countries already excited to trade with India. On top of that, India can trade with the UAE, which will again decrease the cost of goods for India. Eventually, it will decrease the Indian dependency on the dollar, and more importantly, it will ease the pressure on India on exchange rates. This might eventually increase the value of the Indian rupee. On top of that, India has also announced a digital rupee, which experts have claimed to probably even replace cryptocurrencies in the future. But it's easier said than done for India. The West obviously won't like the action of India and will come up with new sanctions on India, or at least threaten to impose one. That was all in this video. What are your thoughts on India's initiatives to kill dollar dominance? Do you think India's strategy will work? Let us know in the comments section. Also, let us know what topics you want us to cover in our next video. See you in the next video.